We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. By the time you hear this, it will be Friday. It is January 2nd, the second day of 2026. We had Jace on yesterday, and today we've got Eric. And I'm glad we've got Eric in here because there's some things going on in Iowa that are worth talking about, plus all the other crazy bullshit that's going on. And Eric, I just want to put this out to you and see what you think. We're into the new year. I have a feeling like today and into the weekend, we'll hear little things and stuff. But I'm feeling like come Monday, that's when shit's going to explode. Congress is going to be back in session. Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to resign. What's she going to do before she resigns? They've got to try to figure something out with the ACA subsidies. There's going to be more Epstein shit. Uh, I just have a feeling that from Monday on, it's going to get crazier than it ever has been. And that's saying something.
Oh yeah. Well, as always, thanks for having me. Love being on the podcast, and I think you're right. Starting with probably Monday, as we get past the weekend, get Congress back, there's going to be more and more coming out, and it's going to continue to mount pressure. Now, the 2026 midterm season is upon us. You know, we're 2 months away almost from the first primaries. Things are going to start really moving and shaking as we get closer and closer to the primaries. As things get moving, you got Marjorie Taylor Greene leaving. Is she going to try to do anything with the Epstein files and reading client list on the House floor? Is she going to try to get rid of Mike Johnson? Who is she going to pull the ultimate curveball and decide and say, yeah, you know what, fuck it, I'm staying. You know, I mean, who knows? I wouldn't put it out within I wouldn't say it's outside of the realm of possibility because at this point, anything's on the table, but it's going to continue to get worse every single day for the Republicans and for Donald Trump leading up to the 2026 midterms in November. And they're not going to go well for Republicans.
No, it's not. One of the things I want to talk about, I hate that we have to talk about it but it's so prevalent in the news and it's so much bullshit. And I just want to make sure people understand exactly what's going on. Of course, the Republicans and Donald Trump are really harping on this fraud that happened in Minnesota with childcare and uh, how millions of hundreds of millions of dollars were stolen, and it was the Somalis. The first and foremost, we have to make this point. This has been going on for 6, maybe 7 years. The Biden DOJ investigated, prosecuted, and convicted dozens and dozens of these people involved in this case. So this isn't a new story. This is something they're grabbing at straws at strictly to distract people from the Jeffrey Epstein files. Sadly, they'll fuck up again. It won't distract people from the Epstein files. This is not as big a deal as the Epstein files. But it's not even really a big deal. We got this Nick Shirley, this 23-year-old that claims to be a journalist, which he's not. He's just a radical right Trump-fuck podcaster bro like anybody else. Um, and he goes around and he's trying to prove some things. No kids are in the school. Well, he went there when it wasn't open or after the center was closed. It just stinks of the sketchiness of the Republican Party. And then we hear that Lisa DeMuth and some other people. Lisa DeMuth is the Speaker of the House in the Minnesota legislature. She is a Republican. She is a Republican, and she basically sent him out there to do this. So this is all a big scam put on by the Republican Party in hopes to distract people. And what do we know about them? They always fuck up. This has been exposed. This has been debunked. And this little 23-year-old kid, he's going to get his ass sued numbers of times. And if you see him interviewed now, fucker's nervous, and he should be nervous.
Yeah, this whole thing, it was a non-story, and I hadn't really been talking about it for the longest time. It's been what, a week or so that this has been going on, and I didn't really talk about it until more came out that he was going there before they were open or on off hours, and then he shows up with people wearing masks like ICE agents or whatever, and they were demanding to see the kids. Well, two things with that. One, I made this example over in one of the videos I did about it, where I said, we got a local grocery store here in town that closes at 9 p.m. Now, I'd look like a dipshit if I went there at 2 in the morning and said, I want groceries. And I was out there holding signs, and had a video camera going and saying, oh, look, there's no one here. Why is there no one here? They say, they're supposed to be here to, sell me food. It's a big scam. You'd look at me like I was insane. But here that he makes us out to be some big thing. And of course, MAGA runs with it. And if it wasn't for the fact that it was an immigrant run, a Somali run daycare center, that's their other big push, right? They they'd probably call him out on the stupidity too, but it fits their narrative.
Right.
Then the other thing is you have a guy showing up with people and wearing masks who has no children at the facility. You have no idea what he's doing, and he claims to be a journalist, like you said, but he's just really a podcaster. No legitimate reason to be there, and he's holding signs demanding to see the kids. Well, I'd be more worried if the daycare center actually brought him in, let him into the facility to tour or do whatever bullshit he wants to do. It's dumb, but MAGA's running with it because it fits their narrative.
Yeah, just because you're a podcaster doesn't make you a journalist. I'm a podcaster. I am not a journalist. I don't want to be a journalist. I don't claim to be a journalist. I talk about news stories and I give you my angle on it. I'm a commentator more than anything. I'm not a journalist. I don't claim to be a journalist. I read things, I try to understand them, and then I relay them to the people that listen. Nick Shirley's an entirely different thing. He's 23 years old. Um, he's part of the Republican sketchy machine that's just trying to own the libtards. But I think there's more to this story than just trying to own the libtards and trying to distract from Jeffrey Epstein. The reason I say that is because of what's happening now. Initially, Donald Trump said that he was going to freeze all child care funding in Minnesota. Not surprising, he'd want to punish Tim Walz, he'd want to punish a blue state and such. But then he took it a step farther and he said he's freezing all funding for child care all throughout the country in all states. That if you wanted the funding, you're going to have to go through some process and prove it and all that stuff. I think this might have been the end game. This is what Republicans want to do. They want to end the ACA. They want to end the child care stuff. Um, they can't possibly believe that this is going to help them in the elections coming up. So the only thing I can think of is they know they're going to lose and they're just breaking shit on their way out.
Well, that could be part of it, but as we've talked about with other things, they're trying to make it so hard to use any of these services, so then they can say, "Well, see, because we're not, now it's not, we're not sending out the money that was clearly fraud. We didn't need to spend that kind of money." I did the math, and they're talking about total Head Start and daycare expenditure for the federal government. Sounds like a huge number. 23 or 24 billion, something like that for the year. Sounds huge until you look at the fact that we have 6.8 trillion in spending for the federal government.
Yeah.
That is 0.4 of 1%. 4/10 of 1% of the federal spending. But again, they want us to focus on this and not the rest of it, not the millions or billions of dollars being spent on defense, not Donald Trump wanting to design and commission new warships. This Golden Fleet, that the dumb bullshit that is. They want us focused on the wrong things. And one of the things that they're focused on with this daycare thing is they want people who don't qualify for daycare assistance to be mad at the people who do, because it's well, see, you want for them to think that the people who are qualifying are only doing it for some kind of a fraud or a scam, and that they're somehow taking from the people who don't qualify. I know multiple people who don't get federal assistance or any sort of state assistance for anything. And they're legitimately mad that they don't qualify, that the government's not helping them out. And I keep trying to say, well, look at it the other way. What by not qualifying, the government is saying you're making enough money. You should be financially stable enough not to need the assistance. It's not that they're taking from you, it's that you're doing pretty goddamn well.
Yeah, well, and the other thing that people who can afford daycare have to consider, if they take away all this funding and all these kids that are qualified for some help from the government now can't go to daycare, guess what? You get daycares closing down. They can't afford to continue. There's going to be less and less spots for those of you that can afford it. And maybe now you have a difficult time finding a place for your kids. I mean, the whole thing trickles down and it affects everybody. I don't think anybody who can afford daycare is mad at the people who can't. I have two grandkids, one grandkid in daycare, the other one will be in daycare, and my son and my daughter in law pay for it. They're not getting subsidies, but I don't think they're mad. I wouldn't be mad at other people that need help. I mean, this isn't about money. This is about fucking kids. It's a matter of what your fucking priorities are.
Well, I do know some people who are mad that they're not mad necessarily at the people who do qualify. They're mad that they don't get the help. That well, I've got to pay. It goes back to what we always hear from Republicans when it comes to anything when it comes to helping people. Well, I've got to pay my own way. You should have to pay your way too. And that's it. It's a bad argument. It's done in bad faith. But like you're right when you say these daycare centers and stuff are going to be closing, and even if none of them close and they all stay open, but if none of them close, but they can't get more kids in that are paying the same rate as the people that are already there, these providers are going to have to charge even more to the people who are still coming so they can still make the same amount of money and pay their own bills.
Or at the very
Either way,
least,
it
they
doesn't
let
work.
some teachers go. They might let
Yeah.
teachers go too because there's not enough kids. I mean, they don't, Trump and the Republicans don't think beyond the end of their nose. Um, it's interesting that he would be complaining about child care funding maybe going in the wrong places when we find out yesterday that $110 million has been sent on Donald Trump's golfing excursions. That's in 1 year for $110 million. And what makes it worse is a lot of that money is going back into his pocket because he's going to his own properties and overcharging and then ultimately getting the money out of the fucking thing. We aren't upset about that. That doesn't seem like money laundering or fraud. I don't know.
Well, two things with that. One, I'm surprised the number isn't higher, honestly. I figured it'd be more.
That's
And
for
two, you're
one
right. It
year
is.
though.
Well, I know, but I still thought it was going to be more money.
Wow.
But it is overcharging because we find out that he charges for the Secret Service to that by law have to be there to protect him. He charges them a room rate for rooms at his estate or at his golf club where he is staying that he could easily say if he was genuinely this guy who I'm not taking a salary, I'm donating everything, I'm not in it to make a buck. If he was legitimately that way, every time they went to Mar-a-Lago, they'd get free meals, they'd get a free room. That'd be the end of it. But he's not doing any of that.
No,
He's putting
he's
them up
charging
at
more.
he's jacking the rates up, charging them for even more money, charging them for everything. And it's ridiculous. And the Republicans just let him do it. And I will blame the Democrats too, partly, because we saw him do this the first term. Now, what the Democrats should have done, and I know we had a lot of things to fix in um, the first 2 years of the Biden administration, but the
Yeah.
Democrats, when they had control of both chambers of Congress, they should have passed a law that would prohibit this from ever happening again, and they didn't do it.
Right.
In part because they figured we wouldn't be dumb enough to reelect Donald Trump ever again, and nobody else would try it. But when he's gone, we're going to need to shore up these things to make sure nobody else tries it again because they will if we let them.
Yeah, they definitely will. So now he's freezing all the child care, and this is going to affect a lot of people, and it's going to be very painful. Um, we know that as of yesterday, the ACA subsidies are gone. It's not like, oh, it's coming. It may happen. They are gone. Now, the intention from Congress is to vote on this again in January. They don't come back until the 5th. That's 3 days from now, 3 or 4 days from now. And we don't even know that they'll vote on it on that particular day. There is a discharge petition. I don't know exactly when it would come up for a vote. I know you have a gut feeling on how this is going to go. And I kind of had that feeling too that they were going to pass it at the last minute. I'm feeling less like they're going to do that because I think they've already thought they lost and they're just trying to do as much damage. But explain what you think is going to happen when they vote for this.
Well, right now, the discharge petition is for 3 years. And
Right.
I ultimately don't think they go to 3 years. I think that I can't remember which member of Congress said it, but one of them or several of them have come out and said, well, we really have until like the 15th where we can fix it, we can save it if we get the subsidies passed, and we can work it out and nobody will get hurt. I think they're going to end up, if they save it, on 2 years. And this is me looking at it logically. Um, if they go for 1 year, that means it expires January 31st of this year. They're going to have to answer questions about it all the way through primary season, all the way through the election, etc., going forward.
Right.
And they're not going to want to do that. If they go 3 years, if they're looking ahead, they're going to have to answer those questions in 28. And they don't want to have to answer them in 28 any more than they do in the midterms, especially with it being a presidential election year. So 2 years seems to me to be the sweet spot. And you could convince Donald Trump to sign it by saying, hey, we just need more time to fix healthcare in your image the way you want it to make sure it works from day one so you don't get blamed for a failure. You pass it off like that, he's more than likely going to sign it because he is worried about looking like a failure. 2 years makes sense. If they get three, I would be surprised, but I don't know that they want it, that even Republicans want it to fail. I think they're going to try to come up with something and say, well, see, we saved it, but we had to do it because we would have saved it before, but it was up, but Democrats were the ones holding it out when they shut down the government, or they're going to try to find a way to blame the Democrats, even though it won't work.
Well, theoretically, that sounds exactly logical. But as we've learned, logic doesn't really come into play in this political landscape anymore, based on some of the things we've seen. Here's my issue, and you brought this up. It'll probably pass in the House. They got 218 votes on the discharge petition. No reason in the world it won't pass in the House. Then it has to go to the Senate. So the Senate already voted down this very thing, 3 years, extend the ACA subsidies. So what's going to get them to sign on to this time as opposed to last time? Now, what they may do is like what you said, they'll say, okay, we'll sign this, but it's got to be 2 years. Then it goes back to the House. The House decides to sign it, and then it goes back to the Senate. And presumably the Senate would do it then if they cut it back to 2 years. And I think that term makes some sense. I think the Democrats maybe made it 3 years with an intention of some negotiations to be able to give something. Um, but then it goes to Donald Trump. And theoretically, these people might be able to convince him to do it because he's a dumbass, um, and convince him to sign it. On the other side of the coin, we got a guy who's mentally diminished, has nothing to lose, and is already trying to burn down the fucking house. So I'm not absolutely positive that if it gets through the House and the Senate, that Donald Trump will sign it. I'm not positive of that.
The only reason I'm pretty sure that they would get him to sign it is that if they pass it, they can play it to him as, well, we're doing this for now so you don't get the blame for it failing while we fix your problem, while we fix it, while get your system and your fix in place to actually make it better. And it just takes the right person talking to him. And I think there's at least going to be one or two Republicans that'll get through to him and getting him to sign it. It's just going to be a matter of how they phrase it. That's my take. And because Donald Trump, the last thing he wants to do is get blamed for anything ever. And he doesn't want anything with his name attached to it to fail. So I think that's how they make that move. I think they turn around, they explain it to him that way, very simple terms. But he's also not well, like you said, he's got cognitive issues. They have to put up signs all over the White House now directing him where to go. Like there was ever any question where the Oval Office was. But now they have to have signs up that says the Oval Office or the West Wing or whatever. It's so he can find his way around because otherwise he just wander around aimlessly, not being able to figure out where he's going because he's facing some severe cognitive decline.
Yeah. Well, this particular bill, once it gets presented in the House, ultimately in the Senate, um, bears some resemblance to the Jeffrey Epstein files thing. Now we know the Republicans did everything they could to hold back and not release those files, but when it came down to nut cutting time, it went to the House, and everybody but one person voted for it. And the reason that they did that is because they didn't want to be identified as somebody who voted against releasing the Epstein files. And then with that kind of momentum, it went to the Senate and they just signed off on it in totality because they didn't want to be the ones that looked like they were signing to cover up this Jeffrey Epstein file situation. 218 people signed the discharge petition that time. 218 people signed the discharge petition this time um, for the extending the ACA subsidies. And many people in the House have said, yeah, we are expecting more Republicans to vote for it than the ones that just signed on to this. What's the likelihood, because it's a similar situation, do you really want to be the one identified as taking away health care from 24 million people? Probably not. It wouldn't bode well for them in their states. 57% of the people on ACA are in red states, so that's a problem for these senators and representatives. Do we see another situation like the Epstein files where a ton of Republicans vote for it in the House and the Senate just because they don't want to be perceived as somebody who's taking away health care? Do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, I do. And I think that number is going to be pretty large. And maybe that depending on how well it goes in the House, if it does snowball like the Epstein thing, if it passes anything north of 300 in the House, I don't think it's going to go for 27 to 1. But if they get 300, which is over the number they need to make it veto proof,
Right.
um, it would end up going through the Senate, I think, just as quickly. Um, and if that happens on this discharge petition at 3 years and not two, it could pass at 3 years just because of the growing pressure and complaints as people are staring at very real world uh, problems. One of the things I've suggested is are they going to have any sort of extra enrollment window or things now that they pass the subsidies and the insurance companies are going to have to lower premiums? Because there are people who said, I can't afford if it's going to go up 400%, I can't afford those premiums and didn't choose insurance.
Right.
So are they going to get an opportunity to still re-enroll? And what's going to happen for those people?
Well, I did hear one representative, he was asked that question. It's already, the subsidies have been taken off. What are you going to do? And they said they'd have to talk to the insurance companies, extend the enrollment, and do all these things. When the fact of the matter is, they didn't have to do any of this if they just extended it. As I've said before, they weren't asking for new money. They weren't asking for any more money. They were asking just to continue with what was going on. And the Republicans flat out voted against it. Um, what do you think happens if these people are so incompetent and can't come together and can't put this together and they don't sign the extension on the ACA subsidies, what does that do to the Republican Party?
Well, I have been saying, and we've talked about it a lot, I think that the House is almost guaranteed to flip Democrat one way or the other.
Yeah.
Now, we've been saying 30, 40 seats, probably pretty much guaranteed, is what I'm thinking they could flip. With as bad as everything is looking right now and as incompetent as the Republicans are looking. Now, other creators have argued with me. Was in a live room with somebody a couple nights ago, and they said Democrats would be lucky to take 10, and he's a liberal creator. But either way, I think you could look at the very real possibility of them taking the House by 50 if the ACA subsidies flip, or if they don't get extended, if they are just gone and Democrats start running contested races in all of these districts, saying, hey, your rep let your health insurance fail. Your rep that is currently there voted to let it fail. Democrats could gain momentum, take the House by 50 seats. And then you have the Senate. Now, the Senate was always going to be harder, but I said it's possible that they pick up the 4 seats um, that
Yeah.
they need to get control. If the ACA subsidies expire, I think there's a good chance those 4 seats are guaranteed, and maybe they pick up 6.
That's possible. You're saying there's a liberal creator out there that you were on a live with that said they'll be lucky if they get 10 seats in the House?
He's very liberal, but he does a lot of historical and analysis and stuff. And he said he just thinks the political climate, and he's basing it more on, we thought we had all the momentum going into 24, and then we got trounced. He's going how he still thinks the House is going to flip, but he thinks it's going to be closer to 10. Yeah.
Do I know this dumb fuck? I'm sorry if he's a friend of yours.
I don't know, and I can't remember. It's I can't think of his name right now. It'll come to me later, I'm sure. But um,
Well, here's the
he's very
thing.
knowledgeable.
Here's the thing. He's basing it on 2024. The world's a fucking entirely different place in 2026 than it was in 2024. Um, Donald Trump and the Republicans lost in 2020 because they were coming out of the Trump term, and people remembered the fuck ups that they committed. That's where we are now. You can't compare it to 2024. You got to compare it to 2020 because people are living the problems that Donald Trump has created. The idea that there might be 10, maybe 10 that switch, I find that hard to believe. Is he not paying attention to the fucking elections that have happened recently? From the mayor of Miami to all those on that Tuesday. That's not happening just by luck or by chance. Here's my problem with some liberal commentators out here is they always look to the negative side and they go, "Oh my God, we're not winning. They're doing this. It'll never be okay. We'll never get out of this." And it gets tiresome after a while. You can look at historical things, but what we're living through right now, we've never seen in history. So you can't compare historical numbers to what's going on today because this is unprecedented.
Oh, yeah, I would agree. Um, and we talk about special elections. There just was one Tuesday night here in Iowa,
Right.
filling a vacated Senate seat. Now, it's an Iowa Senate seat on a random Tuesday in December, but special election, and it was it was for Des Moines. I don't know the exact makeup of the county and what percentage they broke for Kamala Harris or in uh, 24. But I assume that the district went for, or the Senate district went for her. But I had the name earlier. I forgot it. But the African American woman who won the seat, she is the first African American woman, I believe, ever elected to the Iowa Senate, won it with 78% of the vote.
Right.
I mean, that's huge. Now, it doesn't change, again, the balance of power here in Iowa. it just maintains pretty much the status quo. However, it kept the Republicans from having a supermajority in the Iowa Senate. They,
Exactly.
they had a chance to pick that back up and go back to having a supermajority and getting their way doing everything. And it didn't happen. It's just a sign of things to come. And that's one of the reasons why I think Iowa is in play in 2026.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you were talking before we went on, you were talking, let's talk about Iowa briefly. You were talking about some of these new things for SNAP that are coming into play now that we've entered 2026. It sounds pretty stringent. It sounds like it's going to be problematic for people in Iowa that get SNAP. Apparently, they're making qualifications for things you can buy and who you are and such. So explain that to us.
Okay. Up until, well, yesterday, as we're recording this, December 31st, the rule in Iowa was, can you eat it? And is it hot? If it was considered a hot meal, because some grocery stores and other places, you can go get a hot pre-made meal. Those
In the
never
deli,
qualify.
right?
Right. Those don't qualify. But some of those same delis would package it up, refrigerate it, chill it, and then you take it home, microwave it yourself. Those you
Right.
could buy. You could buy your pre-made subs. You could buy, a bakery cake, whatever the case may be. All those were allowed. Starting today, as we're recording this, yesterday, as you're listening to this, bakery items, bakery breads, cakes, cookies, pre-made subs that are cold, pre-made deli meals that you'll go heat up yourself. None of those are allowed. No soda, no tea. Uh, Only 100% full juices. So no juice. Like some of those are like only like 10 or 15% juice, and they're off. They're mixed with water to make them go longer. They're more juice flavored than they are juice. None of those would count. I think I said no tea, no sugar, no flour, no baking chips, no baking soda, no baking powder, no
Wow.
gravy mixes, no spices. Um, Certain meats and cheeses are now eliminated. Like a third of the grocery store is out. No candy, no chips. Basically saying you get a very limited selection of what you can go get. And the only reason they're allowed to make these changes is because food stamps, the SNAP program, is covered by the USDA. They had to apply and get approved for a waiver from the USDA under the Trump administration. They tried several times under Biden and were rejected every time.
Yeah.
But it's the Republicans' fault that all these changes are happening. Now, I can understand a few of these changes. They say, okay, no pre-made cakes, no cookies, no cupcakes, none of that. Okay, but then they also took away all of the things so you can't go make your own either. So they want you to have no sweets of any kind, or you have to pay for it out of pocket. You know, this is just punishing people that need assistance. And like I mentioned when we were talking about the daycare thing, I think part of it is they're trying to make it so it is hard to use, so people don't use it. So they can either say, hey, look at all those people who are no longer getting it. They were only using it for the junk food. So clearly they didn't need it. And look at all the money we saved that was fraudulent. Or they're making it hard to use so they can say, well, see, people clearly aren't needing the assistance anymore. Look at how good we're doing with the economy. We're making things better.
Well, that the thing about this is that they're weaponizing this SNAP thing, and it is absolute punishment with no point in fact. Let's just say you or I get $200 a month for SNAP. Okay. Now, if you buy nothing but rutabagas, you'd probably be in line with what they wanted. If I bought chips and chocolate chips and soda and whatever, it doesn't save them any money. They're still sending the $200. People could have the choice to make good choices or bad choices, but they're not. They're not committing fraud like so many of Donald Trump's buddies do. It, it's specifically saying it's ironic that the Republicans who say we got to keep government out of our lives, now we're going to tell these people what they can eat and how much they can eat. We'll send you the money, but you can't eat any good stuff. This is strictly a punishment by the U.S.
Hmm.
government against its people. And is Iowa the only state doing this, or is there a number of
I
other
believe,
states?
well, there are some other states that are putting in other restrictions. Some states are taking out like candy and pop, or soda, depending on where you're at in the country. Um, but um, Iowa is the most restrictive that has been passed. It is a test case to see how it works. And I think they are wanting to see how it affects Iowa politics, um, and see if it ends up being something that affects how bad the Republicans regain control or stay in control after the midterms. I don't think they do. I think Iowa flips at least, probably the governor. Um, and even though they're nearing supermajorities in both houses of the Iowa legislature, I think there's a chance that if they don't regain the legislature, at least that Democrats make progress toward recapturing it.
That's the ironic thing about the Republicans, especially with Iowa, and now just nationally. They're looking to cut ACA subsidies. They're cutting child care funding. They're making restrictions on SNAP benefits to see how it affects the elections and how it affects the parties. Dumb fucks, I can tell you how it's going to affect them. If you start hurting people, guess what? They're not going to vote for you. And especially if you're the one that is held responsible for doing these things, the ACA, the child care, and the SNAP funding. Of course, it's going to have a horrible result on the Republican Party because they're the ones doing it. That's why I tell people with the ACA, if your premiums go up, only one group of people to blame: Republicans. Democrats have tried everything they can with a minority, and it's the Republicans who did it. Same with the child care stuff, and the same with the SNAP stuff. Do you mean to tell me that they're not sure if that's going to help them or hurt them? Because it's pretty clear to me, and I'm just a dumb fuck in my living room.
Well, I don't know that they're not sure exactly, but from the articles I've read on it, they are trying to see if they can get away with it, and what the public response is going to be like. It's a test case. Now, you and I can see exactly how this is going to go,
Yeah,
but they're trying to do the exact thing that Republicans have wanted for years. We've both heard the stories, you know, probably me since the 90s on, and you know about the parents that are, the welfare mom who is on food stamps and getting nothing but junk, and their kids are eating better than everybody else, because we've heard those stories forever. Well, now they're limiting all of this supposed junk, that they're saying, well, we're going to cut it all out and we're going to see if it actually cuts people, if it changes the usage and stuff. And what they're hoping for is what I was talking about earlier, is that there's a sharp decline in the number of people that are using the benefits. And they can say, well, see, they were only using it to buy junk, so we didn't need to cover any of that anyway. They're trying to use it as justification to cut it nationally, but it's going to backfire. And like here in Iowa, who else do you blame? They have near super majorities in both chambers of the Iowa legislature, Republican governor, and Republican administration in Washington, D.C. that approved it when they tried to get it approved under a Democrat, and it never happened. How do you not blame Republicans?
got to blame Republicans. And if their idea is that it'll make it more difficult for people to get SNAP, they'll just stop getting SNAP. That's fucking stupid. If someone tells you or me, I'm going to send you $200 a month, and you were able to buy whatever you needed to buy to feed yourself and your family. But then they just said, all you can do is buy soup and scotch tape. I'm still taking the money. I'm still taking the money. I'm not saying I'm too proud for this. I'm not taking the money. They're still going to have to spend the money. They will have accomplished nothing but pissed off a lot of people, which will cost them votes. And I can't believe they're that fucking stupid.
Well, yeah, and it's going to hurt a lot of, it's going to have ripple effects. Look at your local grocery store. They're going to have to go through now. It used to be very simple. Like I said, was it food? Yes, it qualified. Now they're going to have to go through, reflag every item in their computer system, make sure nothing is on there that shouldn't be, and make sure it's going to be a hassle, and they're going to have to deal with the customers that are, well, just last week I was able to buy this. Why can't I buy this with my food stamp money now?
Right.
It is going to be a disaster, and they think they're going to somehow get cheered as saviors and heroes for going after those people who are taking advantage of the system. As the old adage says, Democrats would feed 100 people to make sure, even if there's one person in there that doesn't need them food, to make sure everybody gets food. Republicans would take food away from 100 people because there might be one person who doesn't actually need it and trying to scam the system.
Yeah, it's ironic that these Republicans would be so particular about SNAP payments when their Lord and Savior is spending 100 million a year on going fucking golfing, or sending 2 trillion or 3 trillion to rich people in hopes that they trickle down, and it never does. I mean, the waste of money is substantial, and the least of it is in welfare or SNAP or any of these things. That's what we have to understand, is that the grift and the waste is amongst the wealthy people who seem to get whatever they want, and there's no restrictions on what they can do with it. It's poor people that are having to struggle with this. And I'll be honest with you, the other thing that this is going to cause the Republicans problem with the ACA, with the child care, with this stuff, with the SNAP stuff, you're just setting up the ultimate war between the rich and the middle class and the poor. They're just villainizing wealthy people all the time. Um, and that's the war that's probably going to end up happening. We've got people with the Republican Party that don't like the Republican Party. We got people that don't like the Democratic Party. And I've said our fight now is between right and wrong, not right and left. And if the left is wrong, they should be buried too. Um, and then to have somebody say, with all this stuff going on, well, we'll be lucky to get 10 seats. Fuck you. That's
Yeah,
stupid. I got
yeah,
to tell you, even if my friend said that to me, I would say, you're a fucking idiot. Just look at the facts. Don't look at history, because history is, we've never seen this in history before. It's going to be
yeah.
bigger than 10. There's no
Oh,
question.
I firmly think so, and especially if Democrats put up a united front and they're now pushing as hard as they can to put in, you know, actual competition in every seat, whether that means they're running a Democrat or they're running an independent. We've seen them do that before, where they back, instead of backing a candidate, they back an independent that would just caucus with the Democrats. Either way, let's put some challenges up to these Republicans.
Yeah.
This whole thing is going to be horrible. Now, one of the things with the food stamps that I've also talked about is the food stamps ultimately they help farmers because
Yeah.
everything you eat ultimately starts with a farmer somewhere. And it's one of the biggest programs to help farmers out. Now you put a whole bunch of restrictions on what they can use and what you can get when you already have farmers that are suffering and hurting because of Donald Trump and his tariffs, and you got the soybeans that aren't being bought. You've got corn where you got RFK Jr. wanting to go after high fructose corn syrup and a bunch of other stuff. We see dipshits online talking about, well, we got to stop making ethanol out of corn and go back to just regular old gas. All of that would hurt farmers on top of it. You're adding another step that is going to hurt a group of people that is already hurting, and you're already having to bail them out. And they're not even bailing them out to the right amount of money. as to what they're even being hurt from.
Oh, farmers in Iowa and Nebraska and Minnesota and wherever there are farmers, if they think this bailout is going to do them any good, in the first term, he bailed them out with like 40, $50 billion. And that helped them and that made them feel okay, in spite of the fact that Donald Trump put him in that position. But now, as I've said before, don't expect a bailout because Donald Trump can't get anything from you. Now, the talk is of this $12 billion bailout. It's about a fourth of what they need in order to benefit all the farmers. This is going to benefit the big corporate farms, and all the little family farms are fucked. They're going to go out of business and they're going to go away. And I hope you enjoyed your vote in 2024 because you put yourself in this situation. I'm not happy it happened, but in this world, there has to be some accountability. With the Republicans, there's been very little to this point, but there's going to be some in the future as long as they continue to fuck over the middle class and the lower class and the farmers and everything. People aren't going to stand for this when they're finally suffering. And unfortunately, some of these Republicans have to fucking suffer mightily before they wake the fuck up.
Yeah, I think you're right there that they have to suffer. I mean, I talked about it a while back. There was a woman from Iowa. I don't know, earlier in December, maybe it was November. I don't know. She was all over social media complaining that she couldn't get abortion care. She had a non-viable pregnancy, but couldn't get care for it in the state of Iowa. And but she talked about how she was MAGA and this wasn't what they voted for.
It
Yeah,
is.
it was. It was exactly what you voted for. You just didn't realize it was what you were voting for because you were fed a bunch of lies and you were convinced that the things you were being told from your side of the aisle were correct when they weren't. I've heard for as long as I can remember, when I was old enough to know what abortions were, etc., that the only people who ever got one were women who just decided they absolutely did not want to have the baby and they were using it as birth control. I heard that for the longest time till I got old enough that I actually understood what was going on. I got older and I learned and read and looked into things deeper and got out of that religious mindset
Yeah.
where that focused on it. And that's what this woman found out too is that, oh, this other treatment that I need, it's still considered the same thing, even though it's going to save my life. That's what she was saying. She's like, but I've got other kids. I need to worry about protecting my life. How is this no abortion, thing? How is this pro-life at all? Yeah, we told you. We gave you all the answers. It was an open book test and you failed.
Well, that's exactly right. Yeah, people like you and I and other people on TikTok and in the podcast world and such, we've been talking about this for years.
Hmm.
Now, the fact that you chose not to look into it, and now that you don't know, that you didn't realize, these are adults. We are big people in this world. It's incumbent on you to look into things instead of just going out of emotions and saying, I like Donald Trump because he's a tough guy. Yeah. And he's also going to fuck you over. And when he does fuck you over, people like Eric and I aren't going to be sympathetic. Not that we don't care about people, but we understand this is the only way you'll fucking learn. I'm sorry that's the case, but we need to get this fixed. And if you have to get your ass kicked to get it fixed and open your fucking eyes, well, then so be it.
Yeah, exactly. We told them. We told everybody. And but we were told, how many times did you have somebody in your comments? Because I know it was several for me. Oh, you're just fear mongering. You don't know what's really going on. It's not going to be that bad. Oh, they say they want to ban abortion care. Oh, but there's exceptions. And then you find out the reality that no, there aren't really the exceptions. Oh, yeah, there's an exception for the life of the mother. And I can't remember her name, but the lady down in Georgia who died,
Right.
who she could not get abortion care because of the pregnancy, and they kept her on life support against her wishes till they absolutely couldn't keep her on life support anymore to try to make sure she could give that baby uh, that she could grow the baby, and it was for months that they kept her on life support. I think you know the story I'm talking about,
Yeah, I do know
but
the story. I don't remember the name, but Old Soul has even talked about this. They talked about exception, and Old Soul knows more about this than anybody I know. And they structure it in such a way that it takes too long where those exceptions really don't come into play. You're on the verge of giving birth and you've got to go through this process to get that exception. But by the time the exception is approved, it's too fucking late. And they do that on purpose.
yeah, because it sounds great. Oh yeah, we put in these exceptions, but the reality is the exceptions are either vague or they're hard to get or what have you. And then you have doctors who are afraid of the real consequences of violating these laws because they put it on the doctor. Oh yeah, you violate it, you're going to get 20 years in prison. First offense. They don't want to take any chances. And ultimately, you have to get burned. That's why when Democrats get power back in 28 or well 29 technically, I think they need to go through. They need to recodify Roe v. Wade, put it back the way it was, and make it harder for it to be overturned because um, we've already had medical privacy laws on the books that the Supreme Court hasn't touched, and it should be a thing. We should have access to it, and the more people that get hurt by it, unfortunately, the ones that were voting Republican, the more people that get hurt or that they know somebody who got hurt by it, the more we're going to have people on our side when it comes to everything and actually making it happen.
I think you and I were in agreement prior to the 2024 election, over and above all the other shit that was going on. We honestly believed that overturning Roe v. Wade was going to sink it for the Republicans. And the fact that it didn't tells me that people are just oblivious. They're stupid. They don't understand it. They're all just because Donald Trump said it or the Republicans said it, they're all for it. They don't think about how it's going to affect them or their families. And then when it finally does, they go, "Whoa, what happened here?" This is the essence of stupidity, misinformed, ill-informed, because we've got media that tells different stories to different people. That's why we have divisiveness. Um, this is what I'm saying. You can lay the information out. You and I can do it. Even the media can do it. But until these people get a foot up their ass, they can't comprehend it. It's just amazing to me that we have people that oblivious and that stupid that are adults and that are voting for politicians.
Yeah, I don't remember who said. I think it was George Carlin. Now that I think about it, who said it goes, "We got an epidemic of stupid in this country." Think about how stupid the average person is. Because think about that for a second. Because then you realize half the country is stupider than that. And we're
Yeah.
seeing it full well with everything going on. Now, we thought overturning Roe v. Wade was going to be the big thing that was going to cinch it for the Democrats. We were wrong. But part of it was because it hadn't been long enough yet, I think, looking at it now you're seeing people actually bit and hurt by those laws. We were just talking about how these exceptions, they were the Republicans were hoping that what they did is exactly it would work out the way it exactly worked. Well, we put the exceptions in the laws. And everyone went, oh yeah, it's okay. Those exceptions are going to be fine. The exceptions there. It makes sense. This is only going to be for the people who are using it as birth control. And suddenly, now that they've had to live with those choices, they're going, oh, fuck, it's not just for the people that are using it for birth control. Those exceptions don't mean shit. Maybe that's going to be one of the catalysts in 26 among everything else that is going to help put Democrats back in power.
Yeah, I think now that people have experienced some of the pain from the overturning of Roe v. Wade, so I hope the Democrats are aware enough or smart enough to also use that in their campaigns. Just don't look at that as a lost cause because it's something we can fix once the Democrats get power, and they need to talk about it a little bit because we don't hear about it as much of the struggles and people dying and suffering because of that. We don't hear as much about it because there's so many other fucked up things going on. But we've got to revisit that in the upcoming campaign because there's plenty of people that are maybe taking a different look at this whole situation than they did in 2024.
Yeah, you're right. And I do hope the Democrats revisit it and go back with it. Problem is, I don't trust the Democrats, A, to get it right, or B, to look at it and do an analysis of where they screwed up in 2024 and go, oh, that's what we need to change. You know, they fucked up pulling Joe Biden when they did. They
Yeah,
should have let Joe Biden run the rest of the race. Or, as you and I have talked about, in my opinion, I think Kamala Harris would have gotten over the finish line. She would have won if Joe Biden had resigned and she had become president from that day in July or June, whatever date it was.
yeah.
But that's my opinion. I there's good reason behind it. I think it just takes a lot of the effect out of it. The whole, well, I'm trying to become the first, woman of color and first female president. All of it's gone. It's already now happened. You're in power, and now she can start running on her own campaign as being an incumbent. Democrats aren't looking at that, and they're not saying, "Oh yeah, that's where we screwed up." They're also not looking at it going, maybe we went too far to the right by palling around with Liz Cheney and we were too moderate.
Yeah.
We still haven't heard that from the Democrats. We're still, we still hear the establishment talking about doing things the way we've always done. And, you know, they were so against people like Mamdani in New York City and all of it. They haven't realized we need to go even farther left than they were willing to go. So I don't trust the Democrats to get it right.
Well, we know the Republican Party is fractured, the Democratic Party is fractured, and you have the far left trying to push things. And I agree with you. You're going to have to go far left in order to right this ship. I said in a TikTok that this was a turning point yesterday when Zorhan Mondami was inaugurated as mayor of the city of New York. I think it was a huge turning point because there are Republicans that are absolutely devastated that Zorhan Mondami won, mainly because he's Muslim, he's an immigrant, and he's about serving the people as opposed to the wealthy in New York City. I think the Republicans are just freaked out about it. They'll make any kind of claim he's Muslim, he's anti-Israel, or whatever the fuck he is. They're terrified of this, and I think there's some Democrats too. The Democrats that are in bed with the oligarchs and the big lobbyists, they don't like this because the trend would suggest that it's going to be different than what they've been used to, the establishment and the Democratic Party. I think this is an important point because with that happening, and if Zorhan Mondami is actually successful, fuck, the establishment Democrats are in tough shape. Do you think the fracture in the Democrat will force, just by virtue of trying to win elections, force them to go farther left? I think they need to.
I think so. And I think that's what they need to figure out is that they need to shift farther left. And I think you're going to see some of that as the older guard is going away. We've talked about her a lot, and this is not taking anything away from Nancy Pelosi, from the accomplishments of what she has done in her entire career. But it's time for 80-some-year-old Pelosi to step aside. And she is. She's letting somebody else run. Now we're going to probably get somebody a lot younger and a lot more progressive in her spot. And then if you then you
Yeah.
look at one of the Senate races, uh, if what's his name, Platner in Maine, he's pretty progressive. If he wins his primary and goes on to face Susan Collins, that is going to be a big wake up call because they're running a very establishment campaign against her, established Democrat, 76-year-old or 77-year-old, whatever her name is the opposition against him in the primary. You know who I'm thinking of. I
Yeah,
just
I
can't
know who
think
you're
of her
talking about.
name.
Yeah.
Um,
Is she the
And
former governor or something?
she's the former governor, but very much establishment Democrat, very more moderate. And that's what if she gets beat, a few of these others start getting beat by more progressive candidates in primary season, Democrats are going to have to shift to the left just by the virtue of those are the candidates running and who, if they win, they're the ones going to be in power.
I think that's inevitable that it has to go farther left. I mean, we saw that, back during the Depression and going to FDR, we were way right, and then it went way left. If you like the guy you were talking about, if you want to talk about historically speaking, that's what happens. And I hope that's the case. We need to right this ship and straighten out the Republican Party. Actually, we need to eradicate the Republican Party, and we need to straighten out the Democratic Party and eradicate anybody that doesn't want to get on board with helping the people they were elected by and prefer to bend over for the oligarchs. We've got a ton of them in the Democratic Party. They are a problem. I don't focus on them so much right now because we got the dumpster fire that we got to deal with. But as soon as those Republicans are out of there, people like you and me need to get all over and up in the shit of these Democrats.
Yeah, if primary thing in the next 3 years or so is going to be getting through midterms, getting through the general, getting Democrats back in charge in 2029. But then we need to go after anybody who's not on board with moving this country farther and farther and farther left. And I know he's out of politics already, but one of the prime examples would have been somebody like Joe Manchin, somebody who's Democrat pretty much in name only and very middle of the road. We don't need that right now. We need to get this thing moving. We need to get everybody on board. And, you know, if it's a situation where we're passing stuff and it's going and we do have Democrats voting against it, but it's still passing, I don't care. Let them vote against it as long as the stuff's getting done.
Right.
But if it's a thing where that one vote is the one that's holding us up from getting stuff accomplished, like Manchin did, I don't know how many times. Same with Kristen Cinema, where it was it was even two votes, but it was the same two every single time. Those are the ones we need to go after, get rid of them, and put in somebody who's going to help us get things fixed in this country.
Well, and the other person would be in the Senate would be Fetterman, but he's here till 2028, 2029. But that guy's just a freak show. They could have a cognitive contest with Donald Trump, and those two fuckers would tie.
You know, very well could, or the advantage, depending on the day, may go one way or the other.
Yeah.
Uh, but Donald Trump is not in good health. I don't think he makes it to the end of 29. You talk about him taking cognitive tests. We hear he's taken three, maybe four. Um, you don't take the Montreal Cognitive Assessment if you're in good health, if you're in good mental shape. It's something they give you when they're worried about something. Now,
Well,
maybe you
yeah.
take it and there's no problems. Maybe they give it to you and sure, you get 97, 98%, but they don't repeatedly give it to you if you're fine. You know what I mean? They're worried about something going on. And now you have this bruising on his hands, jumping from one hand to the other. I'm convinced that he is getting IV meds of some kind. I don't know what. I don't know if it's fluids. I don't know if it is some kind of anti-dementia drug, like the one Democratic member of the House has suggested that he is getting $26,000 a month in anti-dementia treatments, IV treatments. Don't know what it is, but he's getting something. Because typically the backup, if they can't get your arms for an IV, they go to your hand. And I know family members whose hands bruise the way his have from
Yep. Too.
IVs, and now his right hand is basically going to be shot for a while. So they've started to give him IVs in the left, and now it's starting to bruise, which means They're going to have to find another location to give him an IV in to do whatever they're doing. And this excuse of it being rigorous handshaking isn't going to fly.
No, that's absolutely ridiculous. Donald Trump's health is in question right now, and I'm glad to see it in the media as well. Like you say, he had bruising on one hand, now he has it on the other hand. Um, he's telling them now that he doesn't want to take any more MRIs because he gets too much shit about it. Again, an MRI isn't done unless there's a reason to have it done. There's an issue, there's a problem. And he's had multiple MRIs. He announced that he is, he did an interview with, I don't know, it was Washington Post, I think. Maybe it was the New York
Wall
Times.
Street Journal, maybe?
Oh, maybe it's the Wall Street Journal. Yeah, he was talking about it. And of course, Donald Trump can't shut up, so he makes everything worse. He was talking about how he's taking aspirin to thin out his blood. And because he wants to make sure it's thinned, he's taking 4 times as much as the recommended dose. And he's been doing this for 20, 25 years. You get that much aspirin in your body every day and you're trying to thin out your blood, that's a problem. That's dangerous. And to be honest with you, the thinning of the blood can have some bearing on the bruising too. I know my grandfather had a lot of bruising on his hands and such. Some of it was from IV, but some of it was from just having um, thin blood. And then there's the other story that I think you brought up in the Wall Street Journal was that he was with Pam Bondi and they high fived, and something on her hand, a ring or something, actually cut his skin. Just a high five cut his skin. So what you have to understand about elderly people, their skin gets very thin and easily torn. Uh, and if you've got problems with thin blood or anything else, everything that we hear about him, things that he's even saying, tells us that he's not in the proper physical health to be the leader of the free world. Mentally, physically, it's all problematic, and it doesn't look good for that orange fuck.
No, it doesn't look good. You have him with this thin blood story. Now he's taking 325 milligrams daily, I think is what they said he's taking.
Yeah,
Recommended low dose aspirin for somebody who they suspect of having heart problems is 81 milligrams. Now, if he says he's been taking it for 20 years, well, that means that they've suspected he's had heart problems for 20 years.
right.
Um, or at least, or he felt weird or something. If he was doing it against doctor's advice or without talking to him, well, then he suspected something. One way or the other, there was a reason for him to take it, not just that he was trying to stay as fit as you could be, because you don't just wake up one day and decide to start taking low dose aspirin. Well, at least most normal people don't. Um, and now he's taken 4 times the recommended amount, and he's doing it potentially against doctor's advice. I saw one article where they were interviewing a doctor, and he goes, "Yeah, 325 milligrams." He goes, "That's the high end of what we give people who are actively having a heart attack." And
Right.
the fact that he's taking this daily, he goes, "That's concerning." He goes, "It will do damage. It can do damage to the rest of your body, prolonged, usage." So we don't know, and we don't even know for sure if he has been taking it for 20 years because when it comes to Donald Trump, when his lips are moving, he's typically lying.
What I don't understand about him taking that much aspirin to thin his blood, I mean, I've never had to do that, but I know my grandfather took something called Coumadin, which thinned your blood, which was much more effective and less dangerous than taking excessive amounts of aspirin. Why don't they have this dumb motherfucker on Coumadin if that's what they want to do is thin the blood?
And who knows? And it could be that there's another side effect from it that, we don't know what is all in his medical report because the only thing that ever gets released about his health is notes that sound like they were written by Donald Trump himself. Oh, he's
Yeah.
in greatest shape of anybody ever. Great physical specimen. Couldn't be better. It's not written in doctor speak. It's not written by doesn't sound like it's written by a medical professional. We don't know what he's on. So maybe there's a reason he's not on Coumadin because there's an interaction with something else that he's taking, or who knows? And maybe if he is in such a mental state, maybe he refuses to take it because he had never heard of it, but he knew aspirin because it was around, 70 years ago when he was a kid because he's dealing with mental decline.
Well, we know that Donald Trump doesn't listen to shit. I'm sure people have told him to eat better, but he's still eating Big Macs and fish fillets. He's taking all this aspirin. And somebody asked him about exercise. He goes, "Oh, I don't do exercise. That's boring." Okay. I believe him that he's not doing exercise. All you have to do is look at that fat fuck and and see that he has done nothing. There was a picture of him with Zelensky, and he was kind of tilted forward, and he had this lost look on his face and his mouth agape. He did not look good in that moment. You have to wonder. You'll see him sometimes, and he gets pumped up with some kind of drug, I'm sure, when he's in public. Um, but it'd be interesting to see what he's like behind the scenes. Is he lost in the White House? Is he just totally wiped out? He's apparently not sleeping a lot, which is not going to be helpful to a guy his age either. But uh, man, there are some pictures that he just looks completely out of it.
I'd be convinced that he is lost in general in the White House. That's why they put up the signage and stuff, so he can find his way around. Um, and it, in a weird way, it reminds me of one of my grandfathers who was suffering before it got to a point when he had to go to a nursing home. Um, he knew how to, had lived in that apartment that they were in for years. He knew how to get in and out, and they never had a deadbolt. None of the apartments in that building had a deadbolt. But they got the landlord to put a deadbolt in for my grandparents in that apartment because now it was something new that he didn't know was there. So my grandma could lock the deadbolt, and my grandpa couldn't get out of the apartment and go wander around because he was dealing with dementia. And now Donald Trump having signs up just so he can know where to even go reminds me of the same thing. He's suffering from something. He's lost. He's low energy. He doesn't know where he is half the time, and they're pumping him full of so much shit. It's unreal.
Well, when you pump him full of that shit, that's going to be detrimental to him too. Now, somebody asked him about sleeping in the press conferences and stuff, and he says, "I'm not sleeping. You're just getting pictures of me when I was blinking." And apparently his staff has said, "Okay, you're not sleeping, Mr. President, but you just got to make it look like you're not sleeping as much anymore. Don't close your eyes and drift off into the land of nod anymore." So my point of this is, for the longest time, we always compared Joe Biden to Donald Trump. They're both old. They both had their issues. But the media just avoided Donald Trump's issues. Now it's becoming more to the forefront. It's coming in the media. He's sleeping. He's bruising. He's walking funny. So it's good to see that people are taking note of it. As much as he's going to gaslight people and say, "No, I'm good," it's a lot like prices. You can't tell me prices are down when I go into the grocery store and prices are up. You can't tell me you're healthy when you look sick as fuck.
Yeah, you talk about him dozing off. Well, a few weeks ago when he did that big press conference event talking about the bailouts to the farmers, he's sitting there, and all of a sudden you watch his eyes, they drift, and he kind of leans forward. You can tell he's out, and he kind of pops back, like he startles himself awake. $12 billion. Like he knew that was the thing they were talking about, and he had to make it a point. He's not helping his own case when things like that happen. Um, and you've noticed since then they're doing less big events.
Yeah.
Um, and it's going to continue to happen. You're going to see smaller and smaller and smaller appearances on his case, trying to prop him up as long as they can before they have to do something here. Now, you mentioned Joe Biden, and something I don't know if you talked about it at all on any of your TikToks. I haven't seen it, but did you see the thing coming on Fox with the guest host they had of Hannity the other night?
I heard about it, but go ahead.
She's on there guest hosting or whatever, and she had the audacity to come out and say, "Well, yeah, do you know where Joe Biden is right now? Man, he's on vacation." And what?
He's
Joe
fucking
Biden
retired.
hasn't been president now for almost a year. But feeds into what Donald Trump has been trying to do his entire presidency so far. All of the bad things are Biden's fault. So clearly, Biden should be out doing something to fix all of the things that Donald Trump has fucked up. No, you guys pushed us, and you ran this story of Biden being diminished, all to prop up a guy who is even worsely diminished that we're seeing all the time, the guy who falls asleep in press conferences and everything else. And you got it to the point where he dropped out of politics. He's retired. I don't care what Joe Biden is doing, unless it's something, illegal. Then okay, maybe I care a little bit, but then prosecute him and let's move on. But no, if Joe Biden's on vacation, so what? He's no longer president. It's not his problem.
I'm on vacation a lot. I'm on vacation every day because I'm retired. That doesn't make me a villain. That's just
Exactly.
that's just what happens when you retire. Donald Trump's on vacation, $110 million a year going to golfing while he's supposed to be working. So, do you think that Donald Trump keeps suggesting that with the economy bad, that it's but Biden's fault, or if something good comes out, that it's his situation? When do you think they get to the point where it's? I mean, I think it's already there, but when do you think it gets to the point to the Republicans that it's ridiculous to continue to blame Biden when Donald Trump's been in office for a fucking year?
Uh, I don't know
Never?
if it does.
Yeah.
I don't know if they do. Because I think what it's going to happen, and we've talked about it. I think they ultimately either the Big Mac is going to get him, or something's going to come out in the Epstein files. Some event is going to happen between now and 29, and we're going to get moved on to JD Vance. And even when JD Vance becomes president and he's trying to fix things as best he can, which won't be very good, that they're
He's a
still
dumb
going to
fuck.
blame. He's still going to come out and say, "Well, I got to fix all the things that um, Biden broke." He's never going to mention the bad shit from Donald Trump ever. It's still going to be, even when they
Well,
move past him, it's going to be Biden's fault.
maybe, but it depends on how Donald Trump goes out. If he dies, that's one thing. If he gets shamed because of Epstein, you may see JD Vance talking shit about Donald Trump because they'll want to separate themselves from Donald Trump if he's been exposed for whatever wrongdoing he's done with regards to Epstein. And that may be in the plan of the Republicans. They know when he's gone, one way or another, they're going to have to separate themselves from them because with him gone and with no power, a lot of shit is going to come out. Donald Trump will become a pariah. I believe that. And then when that happens, they're going to have to back off of him and try to straighten out and rehabilitate the Republican Party. So JD Vance may not bend to Donald Trump after he's out. They could, depending on how he leaves.
Yeah, but I still think they're where they may talk shit on Donald Trump would be about his ties to Epstein if they use that to get rid of him. I don't think they are going to use the economy or any of that against Donald Trump simply because of the number of Republicans that have come out publicly and backed every move Donald Trump has made on the economy. They may quietly try to go away from all that strategy and change things. They just won't publicly admit they're moving away from Donald Trump era economics, um, because they don't want to have the other Republicans answer for any of the comments they made supporting everything Trump did.
I put this out there, and this goes against anything I've ever said about narcissists, but I've been thinking about this, and I'll ask you about it, see what you think. Maybe we did talk about it. Um, 2026 happens. The House is taken by the Democrats in a big way, 40, 50 seats. The Senate, Democrats get the majority by 4 seats. Um, Donald Trump is getting just raked over the coals with Jeffrey Epstein stuff, um, knowing that the Congress is going to do nothing but investigate him for the next 2 years, knowing that he won't be able to accomplish anything. He'll basically be impotent. And when I say impotent, I know he's already impotent. I'm talking about politically impotent. Um, does he just say, fuck it, I quit? Thinking that that will take some of the heat off him. I know that goes against to what a narcissist will do, but here's what I know about narcissists. When they got nowhere to go, nowhere to turn, they fucking run.
The only way he would potentially do that is if it came with some kind of a full pardon from JD Vance. And even that I'm skeptical of. If this was Donald Trump in his first term, I think he could potentially have made that move. But now that we're seeing an even more diminished, cognitively diminished Donald Trump, I don't know that he is in the right mind enough to realize that that is going to be a good play. And he may be so terrified of all of this happening and not understanding what's going on around him 90% of the time that he may end up ultimately just saying, I'm going to write it because I'm smart enough, I can figure a way out of it.
Yeah. You know, since we're talking about a pardon and, of course, his immunity and stuff, as we're getting toward the end here, I wanted to bring up the release of the transcripts and the video of Jack Smith giving testimony in front of Congress. For the life of me, I don't know why the Republicans did this, other than maybe Donald Trump says, let's subpoena him, let's get him in there, let's embarrass him. That was the intention. But Jack Smith is a very intelligent, very talented lawyer. He was more than happy to sit and talk to him. He wanted to do it in public. They chose not to, which turned out to be the right choice because he pretty much fucking he walked them like a fucking dog. You know, everything they tried to do to him didn't work. He said that he thought he had the evidence to prove that Donald Trump was guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt. He also said he didn't think the immunity situation applied in the situation that they were looking into. And then they released the transcripts and the video. I think that hurt the Republicans as yet another investigation that gets blown up in their fucking face. What do you think about that? I can't, unless it was Donald Trump's direction to pull him in there. I don't even know why the fuck they did that. That was stupid.
I think they did it for two reasons. One, I think Donald Trump told them to, more than likely, because he wanted retribution, he wanted revenge.
Yeah,
But two, I think they did it behind closed doors and they thought that they could get him and they could get a soundbite out of context that they could somehow say, well, see, it was politically, like, because you know how they are. Everything
yeah,
they do is they try to get something that maybe kind of sort of feeds their case.
yeah,
And I think that's what they were looking for. They thought they could get a, something out there from Jack Smith that would make it sound like, or they could say, well, see, here he's saying that it was all Biden's idea or whatever to go after Donald Trump, or it didn't work. It backfired. But I think that's what they were going for. They were trying to spin the narrative. And of course, because they're dumb, they failed.
yeah. It didn't work. How do you like Jack Smith now? And it backfired. Again, everything they do backfires. Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, it all backfires. Letitia James, James Comey, it all backfires in their face. When do dumb fucks learn a lesson? Just don't wade into shit that you can't win. Or is it all because Donald Trump said you must do it, and even against their better judgment, they decided to do it anyways? I believe that's part of it because nobody makes these dumb moves, like trying to indict Letitia James 3 times after it's failed. Why would you keep doing that? That's just dumbass Donald Trump shit.
In part, it's because of Donald Trump and he wants his retribution, and they're trying to appease Donald Trump because they don't want to face his anger. And in part, because they actually believe their own hype and they think they're actually smart enough to win this. They believed they were smart enough to go up against Donald Trump or go up against Jack Smith and that they weren't going to get schooled. Honestly, Republicans in Congress are lucky that Merrick Garland waited as long as he did to go after um, and appoint Jack Smith as special counsel the way he did. If Jack Smith had been appointed, say, I don't know, February 1st of 2021, there are probably sitting members of Congress that are in Congress right now who would probably be behind bars with a conviction because Jack Smith got after it and got them done. But Merrick Garland sat on his hands, waited forever, and part of it they're now they feel like they're invincible because they got away with some of that bullshit too, and that Jack Smith didn't target them yet in their investigation. That they never got the charges, so they think they're smarter than Jack Smith, which clearly isn't the case.
Well, no, no, they aren't smarter than Jack Smith. Will said something to me, and it sounds like you agree with him, and I just find it hard to believe. He said that the Republicans keep doing these things, these stupid things, because they honestly believe they're winning, that they're
Mhm.
going to gain some purchase in doing these investigations, which they never do, that they believe they still have a shot at the midterms. Do you think these people are that stupid that they believe that they're winning right now?
Yes,
Wow.
100%. Because if they really believed they were going down as hard as what it seems obvious to us, that they are going to go down, they wouldn't be back in this the plays they're doing. And I think it is everything to do with how 2024 went down. And I think they were resigned to the fact that they were going to lose in 24. I think they saw the same things we saw going into the 2024 election, that they were going to lose the House, that the Dems were going to keep the Senate, and that we were going to have Kamala Harris as president. I really think that was what was going to happen, or that they believed that was what was going to happen. And then the election comes around, and lo and behold, miracle of miracles, they keep the House. Although it was by the smallest majority we've had since 1930,
Yeah.
somewhere in there, but they kept the House. They flipped the Senate, and dipshit became president against all odds. And I think they feel invincible, that they actually have the momentum and that it wasn't some kind of a dumb fluke on their part, that they don't view it as a cheap win. They were convinced they were going to lose and they somehow pulled out this victory and now they feel invincible.
So they believe they have a horseshoe in their ass and they are going to win no matter how bad it looks. Now, a lot of people will come to me and say, yeah, but 2026, they'll cheat and they'll maintain um, power in the House and the Senate. And I try to explain to them, and maybe you can explain it better. The idea of cheating in all these representative races and all these Senate races and the governor's races and all this stuff, that's virtually impossible to do that. It's one thing with the presidency, but with all these different races in the different states, even with the gerrymandering, I personally think the gerrymandering is going to work against them because we know Republicans always fuck up. But there are people that say there's not going to be elections, and there's people that say they're going to cheat and win anyway. I'm not buying either one of those things. I think that's bullshit, and that's fear mongering by our own Democratic Party.
Yeah, if they were going to be able to cheat, and people will say, well, they cheated to win in 2024. If they did, then why didn't they end up with, the House by 10 votes, 15
Yeah.
votes, 15 seats? Why did they only have it by five, I think, three, whatever the number was initially? It was ridiculously small. It was, like I said, the thinnest majority they'd had since 1930 or so. Ridiculously small. Um, why didn't they? And if they could have done it, I don't think they did any sort of nefarious cheating because, much like what happened in 2024, no evidence has ever come out, or in 2020, I mean, no evidence has come out that 2024 was rigged or stolen. There's just a lot of conspiracy theories. Now, if something comes out and gets proven, then sure, they, I would listen to that. But they're not going to be able to rig it. There's going to be midterms. We've always had elections. We've held elections through uh, every major event in this country. Hell, we held elections for the entirety of the Civil War.
Right.
We were
And World War
literally
II and
World
Vietnam.
War One, two, but I use Civil War as a bigger example because there was literally fighting within our shores, within our
Right.
borders,
Right.
compared to World Wars One and Two, where at least most of it was contained overseas. Um, but still, we've always held elections. There's going to be an election, and it's going to be potentially a bloodbath for the Republicans. They're not going to expect what's going to happen. Now, they're doing their best to do some things to cheat, and this is as good of a time as any to talk about it. They just recently changed the rules for postmarks on your letters.
Right.
Now, most people don't mail very many things a year. I don't remember the last time I had to take a letter with a stamp on it and go mail it. I just don't. But um thing is, the old rule was you take it to the post office the day they collect it, whatever date it gets collected out of the bin is the date that they got stamped on it at your local office. And that's why they would have, like, on the drive up bin, it would say collected at this time every night. So they'd go collect it if it was 8 p.m. They'd pick it up around 8, and if you got it there ahead of that point, it was going to have today's date on it. Now, for most things, it doesn't matter what day the postmark is. But as Tom Powell Jr. pointed out on TikTok, there are things, especially involving insurance and some other things, that the date it's postmarked makes a difference as
Right.
far as them making decisions and you getting paperwork back in time, or things like that. But it also matters for your vote. A lot of states have rules where your ballot can be received up to so many days after election. It has to be postmarked before a certain date, usually by election day. Well, with the new rule, now it is not going to be postmarked by when it hits your local office, but when it hits the regional distribution center, which that could be a day, or if you're in an even smaller area, maybe 2 days, depending on when they send to the regional area. And it's going to affect people specifically with um, voting and maybe some other things like insurance. And this is the examples of how they're going to try to cheat to win. They're going to do things like what they did in Iowa going into 24, where they limited early voting days. They cut out like 8 days of early voting and trying to limit who can get mail-in ballots, those kind of things. They're going to try to do it, but it's not going to be widespread, systematic cheating where they're just going to be adding in ballot upon ballot and suddenly they win by large margins. That's not what they're going to do. It's the other stuff.
And the other thing about the postal service is that it'd be one thing if Democrats were the only ones that used mail-in ballots, but Republicans too. The Republicans are going to have that same issue, and they're dumb motherfuckers, so they won't know.
Right. I mean, and what somebody else, I don't remember the name of the creator, pointed out, and because they were doing a response video to a comment in theirs where it said, well, look at this change in how the post office is doing things. See, it's proof that Republicans are trying to cheat. And in a way, yes, they are. And this creator, and I can't remember who it was, but she comes on and she goes, yeah. She goes, but this just also proves how stupid they are because they're changing the rule here end of December, early January, with 10 to 11 months to go till the upcoming election. plenty of time for Democrats to get the message out to make sure people drop that ballot off 2, 3, 4 days in advance. That as soon as you get it mailed and you get it sent back, or you take it to your local drop box or whatever the case may be, and you do those things to make sure your vote counts. They've given Democrats plenty of time to message. But like you said, Republican voters are dumb fucks. And I guarantee you, they're going to wait till close to the election. They're going to get their talking point about mail in voting from Donald Trump. And when he says, oh, I'm against mail in voting, they're going to come out and say, well, don't mail in vote. And it's just going to cost them votes in the election.
Yeah, because they're going to think it's not going to affect me, just like prices, just like healthcare, just like SNAP. Yeah, they don't fucking know. All right, Eric, I'm going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. You probably have some shit to do tomorrow. I don't really. I'm going to talk to Ed tomorrow, so he'll be on Saturday, which will be nice to have him back. So, Eric, I thank you for coming on and straighten some things out for us. I know people look forward to hearing from you.
Well, thanks again, like I said earlier, for having me. Love being on here. I'm glad people get something out of the appearance, and I try to straighten things out, look at things logically, give you whatever insight I have into what's going on, because very easily it's easy to get swept up in the emotion of what's going on and the fear. Media
Yeah.
is good about getting that fear turned up because if you're afraid, you're tuning in, and if you're tuning in, that means money. That means ad money, that means whatever. And that's what they care about. They want money. The media is not our friend. So it's important that people like you and me come out and try to keep the fear to a minimum, just talk about what is and break it down like that. And for those looking to find me, you can find me over on TikTok at Analytical Iowan for as long as TikTok is around. We'll see. It's getting worse and worse by the day. Over on Blue Sky at Analytical Iowan, or you can catch me on YouTube or Spotify at Analytical Iowan on theirs as well, where you'll get all of my TikToks as well as the Analytical Iowan podcast.
Now, you and I talked about this after a show recently. There is one guy who puts in the comments and he doesn't like you for some reason, which I'm sure you're not hurt by because I got plenty of people that don't like me in my family. but but just to this guy, this podcast will say Eric's name in the title. Now, if you see Eric's name in the title and you listen to the podcast and then you say, oh, this was unlistenable, here's my response to you. I won't put it in the comments, but I'll give you my response right now. Fuck off. Don't listen. I don't fucking care. Okay? Because it's one thing, you can give me shit all you want. I'll take that. I've been married 42 years. That's all I do is take shit. But you start giving my guests shit, then we got a problem. You got a problem with me. I don't like you very much, and that won't bode well for you in the future. So, you know who's on the show. If you listen to the show and then you want to make some comment, again, you can fuck all the way off because I don't care. You don't dictate who I have on the show or why I have on the show, and you can say whatever the fuck you want. But we know after all these years doing this podcast, my show, I do what I want to do, and nobody else is going to dictate how I do it. So fuck off. Anyhow,
Yeah, I know. I remember that guy. I couldn't believe it's like, well, yeah, and that's something you hear out of somebody on the right.
yeah.
We see them come into our lives and drop into our comment sections. If I'm scrolling past a video and I come across a right wing creator and I don't like what they're saying, you know what I do? I scroll. I move
Yeah.
on. I don't drop a comment. I don't tell them they're fucking stupid. I don't say it's unlistenable. I just move on. And I'm not saying this guy's a right leaning commenter. It's something that the people on the right do a lot. And if you don't like what I've got to say, okay, fine. Listen to the other guests, that are on, and skip today's episode. It's not going to bother me. But for those that do enjoy me being on, I'm going to keep coming back and sharing my perspective on things because I know there are people that get something out of me being on here.
And I will tell you this, if you decide to go in the comments and say, Eric sucks, I dare you to do that. Because it's not me that you have to worry about, because you're going to have people in those comments crawling up your ass. I guarantee you, because a lot of people, most people, almost everybody, except maybe you, like Eric and like having him on the show. So I'm not going to give the guy's name. I don't really give a fuck. He is a left leaning guy. He likes the show, he says, but certain people he doesn't like. Well, there's a lot of people I don't like either. None of them come on the show, thankfully. But again, fuck off. That's all that matters. All right. Well, for those you normal, decent people, which is 99.9999% of you, thank you for taking the time to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.